Thank you so much, guys, for joining. We know it's late in the afternoon, and we know it's hard to follow Josh Benton and Marty Barron. Round of applause for them. They were awesome. I'm sure that both of them would agree that newsletters are a vital part of the news ecosystem these days. Why? Because we all have email, don't we? Raise your hand if you don't have email. We all have email. When we started Axios in January 2017, one of the questions we had to ask ourselves was, how are we going to break through? People are being inundated with news and information. I mean, 3.5 billion snaps a day, trillions of searches. It's so hard to cut through the clutter. And so one of the things we recognize is that there are three places where people often go on their mobile phones for news and information. And why do we care about mobile phones? Because roughly 60% of our media diet is spent, including overlap, on mobile phones. So there are three apps that people tend to go to. One is some sort of a search agent, whether that's Google Search, Safari, Apple, etc. The other would be some sort of a social media platform, whether that's Facebook, Twitter. If you're younger, maybe it's Snapchat. And third is email. Email is one of the most frequently checked things on mobile. So we figured, how can we reach you via email in a way that you're actually going to want to open it? That's why we have decided to invest a lot in newsletters here at Axios. Raise your hand if you've heard of Mike Allen. Of course you have. Mike Allen is one of the most fearless and intrepid White House reporters and political reporters of our time. He authored an email newsletter at Politico called Politico Playbook. And one of the things that was so fascinating to me about Playbook was that it was very text-heavy. And the reason for that was because at the time, people were consuming that newsletter on BlackBerries, which is a very text-friendly mobile phone. Well, now with iPhones, everyone gets rich picture, everyone can consume graphics in their newsletters, and we wanted to make sure when we launched newsletters for Axios that it could adhere to that format. So I wanted to just sort of take you through our site, take you through our thinking on newsletters, so that you guys could learn a little bit about our special sauce. We have 13 newsletters at Axios. We started out with just 3. Started out with healthcare technology and Axios AM. We've since decided to dip into a bunch of different niche topic areas, everything from Codebook, which is cybersecurity, energy, generate, business, science, you name it. This is my newsletter. I am a media reporter for Axios. I author something called Axios Media Trends. One of the things that our newsletter authors will tell you today that can be really difficult is deciding how often do you publish it. Do you go every day? Do you go once a week? I author my newsletter once a week, which means that I have to deliver really special insights to you. And I'll walk you through what that looks like. For other people that author a newsletter every single day, they need to make sure that they get you most of the news of the day. So everyone's strategy within Axios for writing a newsletter can be completely different. I figured I'd walk you through an example of mine just to show you how we sort of think about it. Ben Smith, if any of you guys heard Ben Smith talking today, said something that really resonated with me, which is that there still is a business for news. And we really believe that at Axios. We believe in breaking news. We think that there's value in doing that. And so one of the things that we try to do with our newsletters is, of course, break news. So you'll often see that in Axios newsletters. We try to have at least 1 or 2 things that are new to us, completely exclusive, something scoopy, something that makes our readers need to come back. The other thing that we try to do is pull out really smart quotes in a visual way. This is the genius of our design and technology team, led by 2 of the top R&D people at the New York Times. That's Alexis Lloyd and Matt Baji. The other thing that we do, which is really interesting, is that we have really unique illustrations, custom illustrations for the newsletter. Why would we do that? You guys are getting dozens of newsletters at this point. But how many times do you have newsletters that have illustrations that help you tell those stories? Without even taking a look at this headline, if you were to have just seen this graphic, you might understand what this story might be about to tell you. This is part of our service to the readers. It's not just that we're breaking news. It's not just that we're hitting your inbox at the right time or at the right frequency. We're telling the story in a visually compelling way that makes you smarter, faster. Another thing that you'll notice, we number our stories. Why do we do that? I think a lot of people like to develop routine when it comes to news consumption and diet. And the same type of thing holds true for newsletters. For my newsletter, you know you're going to get roughly 8 to 10 items. So if I number them for you and you're at an item number 4, and suddenly you need to hop on the metro, you know you only got 4 items left. You're about halfway there. Numbering the items helps us stay consistent, and it helps guide you through the length of the entire note. Another big thing that we like to do at Axios is make custom graphs. I'm sure any journalist that deals in business, data, will tell you that scrutinizing over data is just as important type of editorial and reporting technique as scrutinizing over the validity of a quote or the validity of a source. We have an entire team that's dedicated just to helping us mine data, sift through data, confirm the data, and then, of course, execute it beautifully. And does it help the reader? Of course it helps the reader. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten notes back from people that would say, hey, I've taken your graphs and I put it in my investor presentation to show them where we should be putting our resources. Other things to note about how we think about newsletters. We try to use what we call axioms, or little verbal cues to help you understand what you should be thinking about when you're reading our newsletter. The quintessential Axios axiom is called why it matters. The way we think about reporting, especially in our newsletters, is we'll give you 1 or 2 sentences about what's happening, and we'll give you 1 sentence about why it matters. Now, the why it matters is tricky, because why it matters for one person could be completely different for another. That's why you have to, of course, know your audience. My audience tends to be really high-level media buyers and sellers, et cetera. But that 1 sentence of why it matters, if you can't think instantly why it matters, there's no point of writing the entire story. The other thing you'll notice within our newsletters is that we tend to be pretty particular with bullets. Why do we do that? Before we launched Axios, our founders, Jim Vandehei, Mike Allen, and Roy Schwartz, went on a listening tour. They met with some of the top people in media, marketing, and advertising. And one of the things that they learned constantly was that people feel inundated with information, particularly long-form text. And it doesn't mean that it's not effective or that it doesn't work. But sometimes it can be difficult in the form of an email newsletter. So how do we break it up? We use bolds and we use bullets. So far, our audience seems to like it, and we're still experimenting with how these formats work. But it's important to us that we guide the reader through a story using these visual cues. Another thing that you might realize or recognize as we're going through these is that there seems to be uniformity in the length. Axios, we launched something, we actually just trademarked it, called Smart Brevity. When we hire people to do different newsletters, these are not just general reporters who get assigned to a topic. These are reporters who have been doing this topic or covering this issue area for their entire career. For example, our tech editor was the spokeswoman for the FCC. She was a spokeswoman at one of the biggest technology companies, and she was a tech reporter for years beforehand at the Washington Post and Politico. Our healthcare reporter authored a book on Obamacare with Senator Daschle. These are people who are issue area experts. So why can we deliver you news and information in such short form? Because these are people who know the issues so well in and out that they feel as though they can confidently deliver the most important information in a few amount of words. I'm sure you've heard that old saying or expression, I would have written a shorter letter if I had all the time. That's what we're getting at here. We deliver it in a brief form because we feel as though we have experts on the topic and they have the authority to do so. Finally, the last thing about all of our newsletters that's pretty important to us is we try to give it a little bit of personal flair. In the morning, if I'm traveling, I'll tell you where I'm going. I'll tell you a little sneak peek or a snippet of what it is that you should know. The newsletters are not about us, but they do come from our names in your inbox. So if you were to sign up for my email, it would come from Sara Fischer. If you were to sign up for Mike Allen's, it would come from Mike Allen's. And the reason that we do that is we want to build a personal brand. We want you to follow us on Twitter. We want you to get to know us as reporters, just as we want you to get to know our news organization. So that's a little quick, brief insight into how Axios thinks about newsletters and how we build them.